Welcome to Medical Intuition Illuminated, the podcast bringing light to the wisdom of the body. I'm your host, Laura Wise, a medical intuitive and psychic medium dedicated to helping you understand the subtle and layered ways your body communicates. Here, we explore the meeting point of intuition, physiology, and energy, approaching the body not as a puzzle to fix, but as a wise, expressive system that's always speaking. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not medical advice, and it does not replace professional healthcare, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any medical concerns. In this episode, I'll be defining what medical intuition is. I'll be walking through my process of giving a session as a medical intuitive. And I'll also be discussing some of the ways that I interpret information that I'm getting from the body and some of the frameworks that I use to help me understand what it is that I'm seeing. Let's get into it. So, what is medical intuition? Medical intuition is a form of intuitive methodology focused on reading the vibrational resonance of a person's body and energy field. The purpose of medical intuition is to uncover the root causes within that person's body and energy field that go beyond what they are experiencing as symptoms and physical, mental, and emotional effects to really get at the why for the current vibrational frequency. In my practice, I'm attuning to the energy of my clients' bodies and energy fields. I allow their bodies to speak to me of what they are holding, how they are functioning, and what they need to return to balance. Medical intuition does not replace medical care. It does not diagnose disease, and it does not claim certainty. Instead, it offers insight, another layer of information that can support awareness, healing, and informed choices. So, how am I getting information for reading a person's body? So, when in a reading, I will tune into their energy field. I'll send my what I call my X-ray vision out to them. And I will use that X-ray vision to start scanning their body. And I work methodically from the top to the bottom. Sometimes we need to move around to different places. Like, let's say I see a pattern down in the digestive system. And that was something we covered up, higher up in the body as well. And I need to link those two concepts together. So the body is really a holistic system. So I will often kind of move through that and look at the different patterns across the body. So there are various ways that I get different types of information within a reading. And one of the main ones is through my clairvoyance, and clairvoyance means clear seeing. And this can come through in different ways. Sometimes I just see symbolic imagery that describes what that energy looks like. Oftentimes I see what the actual tissues look like and how they're behaving or what they're being influenced by. I also might see if somebody has, let's say, an injury within their shoulder. I might see kind of the type of movement that created the injury. I might see the type of movements that are now really difficult for that person because of the injury. So I might see an image of that. I also get a lot of information from my claircognizance, which means kind of the clear knowing or this inner knowing. And that's just when, as I'm speaking and as I'm describing what it is that I'm seeing or understanding, the words just kind of come out. I have this kind of immediate knowing and understanding about what is present. And the more I talk, the more that information comes through. I also get a lot of clairsentience as well. Clairsentience means clear feeling. So I might get sensations in my body that help me understand, where in a person's body they're experiencing something, what the different sensations or pain might be like. And I might feel that in my body. Although I've cultivated a lot of energetic boundaries that keep me from feeling kind of the full force of that pain or energy, so that I'm only getting part of it. And my guides have done a lot to help me create boundaries about how much I feel within my own body. There are also some other clairs that come through occasionally. Clairaudience, which is clear hearing. I typically get more clairaudience in my mediumship readings, although sometimes in medical intuition, I'll get, a word or a phrase that I hear that is relevant to what we're looking at. And very rarely I will get clairalience, which is clear smelling. And this might give me just kind of some other clues, although that's pretty uncommon. So when I'm reading a person's body and doing this work, I always, always, always will work with guides, and I work with thousands of guides. I set the intention at the beginning of the session to call in anyone who is ready to support this person and this situation. And so I'm calling in specific guides for what it is they have going on and what it is that I need to hear about. And I often don't even know who these guides are, and it doesn't really matter, right? I could spend time in the session trying to suss out who these guides are, but that's not really useful in the long run compared to the information that they're bringing in. So it's enough that they want to help and that they're available. From what I understand, a lot of these guides are people who were in life practitioners of some kind. Could be doctors, could be Chinese medicine practitioners, could be healers of various sorts, who have dedicated their life to helping people and continue to do that after their life on this planet has ended. And so their vibrational frequency has agreed to continue to be helping energies. Sometimes these are from angels, sometimes these are a person's specific guides, sometimes these are my own guides. And again, I'm not really focusing on who's bringing the information through. It's just really about getting that person as much support and information during the session as I possibly can, because it never feels like we have enough time to talk about these things. So I mentioned that I will have my guides actually help me with clear sentience, with feeling the energies in my body, and to kind of create a barrier around that. And I do feel like my guides have helped me create a lot more boundaries around how they bring information in and if they're using my body as an example. So I feel like I get a quite uh, decreased amount. It's more like an echo of the sensation rather than the sensation itself. So the feeling of the sensation without it actually getting to the point of being pain. And it'll just show me the kind of the location and the type of pain and the way that it might feel if it was many, many times more intense. And this is something that I feel like is really important and helps me preserve the longevity of my work, because I do see a lot of medical intuitives and mediums, but especially medical intuitives, who really burn out, who after they have sessions, they need several hours of downtime. They have a very uh, limited amount of sessions that they can do. Sometimes they will have symptoms that they're experiencing for hours or even days or even weeks after doing a session. And I really have never experienced that. I generally don't have. Sometimes I'm a little tired if the session was particularly emotional, or we had to really concentrate to work on the healing part. But as far as having echoes of those sensations after a session, I really close down the energy as well after a session. I have very clear boundaries around when I am in and out of session. And so I don't really carry that person's energy into my own life as much as I possibly can. I also really like using Zoom for sessions for that reason, or doing them virtually, doing virtual sessions, because for me, it creates a really clean container to do the work within. So it's like I can open up that Zoom room, we do the work within that container, and then I close it and I'm done, and I can remove myself from the energy of that person in that situation. And that's another boundary that I've created that I really appreciate about the work. I've definitely done in-person sessions and markets, and that kind of thing, psychic fairs, that kind of thing. And they have a certain magic to them as well. And in person can be really beautiful. And I do love being able to hug my clients after, if they're the hugging type and they're wanting to have that. It's really nice to have that connection, because some of the times the connections are so deep and the things we talk about are so personal and emotional that it's really nice to have that personal connection. But for me, having Zoom sessions really allows me to have a lot of boundaries around the sessions, and also reach many more people than I would physically be able to see in my area, and physically just be able to schedule time around, because I also do have two young children that take up quite a lot of my time as well. So when I do medical intuition sessions, I structure them in two parts. And the first half of it will be a detailed deep dive where I'm using that X-ray vision to go through the person's whole body, read their energy, their different organ systems, and within that time frame, get to as much of the critical things as we can. I often will try to also allow time at the end of that section to return to any areas that people wanted more clarification on, or if they had something that didn't come up immediately within that time frame, that they have an opportunity to surface that as well, and we can look at it energetically. So as we're looking at the body in the different areas, we're looking at the root causes. Sometimes also there are suggestions around different things that could help support the body. I do all of my recommendations with the caveat that people check in with their own personal care team before making any changes to their routine, because I don't want anyone to go against a doctor's advice or to take my word without making sure that it's aligned for what their body actually needs. But a lot of times the things that come up are around different foods that their body would enjoy, foods their body doesn't like, how they're taking those foods, timing, different modalities that could help them. Say like cranial sacral works really well for some people and not as well for other people. Acupuncture, um, and other kind of healing modalities that they can use. Also, we can talk about supplements, and sometimes it comes up that people are taking particular supplements that have ingredients that aren't working well with their body. So I might recommend that they look into alternatives for that supplement as well. And sometimes just surfacing the emotional aspects of a person's body or the things they're experiencing is enough medicine for them, just to know that this is, related to the a certain relationship they have with someone in their life, or a certain dynamic or belief system that they hold about themselves that is impacting their physical health. Sometimes that is enough just for them to bring it into their conscious mind and then be able to work with it in their day-to-day. And that itself is the medicine. However, I also am usually indicated within that time period by my guides various areas of the body that we want to work on energetically during the healing portion, which is the second half of the session. And so usually it's a particular organ system. So, I might be reading a person and we get to, say, the heart, and I see a particular pattern within the heart. And I will usually, look to a certain degree of depth and then during the healing portion, we'll come back and we'll do a deeper dive. I'll get permission again from them to look a little more deeply and to really dig into the dynamic at play. And then we do various forms of visualization and meditation processes where I guide the person through their own healing process in order to release those stagnant energies. And it can vary depending on what people have going on, what the root causes are. There's a few different techniques that I use based on that. But again, I really want to emphasize that my role within that healing portion is to be a guide and a support rather than being this healer that's doing the healing on them, because my whole mission in life is to help people realize the power of their own ability to heal themselves. And people know themselves better than I'm going to know them. I'm reading their body, but they live with themselves every day and they know all the intricacies of that. And a lot of times we're working with releasing the energy around a traumatic event. And in those cases, I never need to know the specifics of that event. I often will get kind of some situational things that help them kind of pinpoint when it is. I can usually pull an age, a specific age that this occurred at, that kind of lodged that pattern in their body initially, and some circumstantial things around that. But the details, if they want to tell me, they can. I'm always here to listen to that. But if they want to keep that private and personal, that's between them and their guides and themselves and their higher self. And they can, whatever they go through during that healing process that I'm guiding through, that's for them to hold. And if they want to share it again, I'm here. But that can be really personal and private. And there's really no reason for me to know all the details with that. And so those are the two halves, and I feel like they pair really beautifully together. Is people walk away with a lot of detailed information that they can kind of implement on a daily basis. And then also the healings are really subtle and simple, but powerful and can really make big shifts. So I feel like people often will come to me specifically for the detailed advice and the detailed insights that I offer. However, they are often really blown away by how powerful those healing portions are afterwards. I don't think they're always prepared for the impact. And it's really beautiful because a lot of times immediately after the healing portion of the session, people feel often say that they feel very peaceful. They feel like part of them that they didn't know was missing is returned, that they feel more whole and have more compassion for themselves and more peace around these experiences that they had. And so it's I wouldn't want to just be able to offer them the technical knowledge without also doing that deep work that can cause the really big shifts as well. So I also have a background in traditional medicine systems. So I've studied both Ayurveda, and I've also studied Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. And I really see the body because of this through an elemental lens. And I use a lot of what I learned to really interpret what it is that I'm seeing within the body, um, to understand it better. And in both traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, they both use different forms of an elemental theory to describe how the tissues work, how different fluids move through um, the body being in balance or out of balance, having to do with these different things. And one of the things that I really love about looking through this lens is that there is no one way that is for everyone. Everybody has a different natural body constitution. Many of us naturally run warm or cold or hot, dry, wet. And there's what we start with, and then there's also kind of what we are influenced by with our environment, what kind of foods tend to influence these things. And every single food has its own energetics to it as well. So if you're somebody that runs cold like me, then you want to avoid foods that are going to exacerbate that and are also cold foods. So I'm somebody that runs cold, and so I really need to be eating things that are warm, wet, brothy things, root vegetables, things that are spices that are going to warm me up, ginger, cinnamon, things like that. If you're somebody that runs hot, you're going to do a lot better with raw food, with salads, with things that are fresh, and might be a little bit harder to digest with somebody with lower digestive fire. And so when I'm looking at the body and I'm reading a person's energy, this is something that I really comes up, is kind of seeing what those energetic temperature patterns are throughout the body. And that really says a lot about the tissues, right? So when we see inflammation in different areas, that inflammation is going to look different depending on whether you have heat inflammation or you have cold and then dryness, and then the dryness causes the inflammation, and that's going to mean the root cause of it is different. That means that the remedies for it are different and the way that it's handled is different. And so just giving people an idea of how to assess their body through that elemental lens is also really helpful. And whenever I see anybody that says, there's one diet for everyone, or there's one herb or one supplement that's good for everyone, that immediately sets red flags off in my brain, because I just don't see the world that way. I just don't see that everybody really is the same and is going to react the same to everything. So I don't really believe in one healthy diet. I think that health is something that is really variable depending on where you're at, what your body, came in with, and what you have access to, and what you can manage, right? So there's always more flexibility that we can have with these things than I think even our traditional Western medicine has led us to believe. Another aspect of these traditional medicine systems that help me to interpret body information is within each organ system, they are connected to different emotions. Each organ system will govern a different emotion. So, for example, the liver governs the emotion of anger, and the lungs govern the emotion of grief, and so on. And this also gives me information about what are some of the emotional and psychological impacts that are causing some of the patterning in the behavior. So when I look at the liver, for example, I'm also going to get information on how that person relates to anger. And this is going to relate to how they handle their own anger and their relationship with their own anger, as well as their relationship with other people's anger. And those can be completely different, and they can fluctuate over time. And the same thing in the other organs like the lungs. Oftentimes when I look at the lungs, when I see a grief pattern, I can see it differently depending on, how old that grief is. So if that's a really old grief that's within the lungs, that's going to settle into the bottom of the lungs, and that's where I'm going to see it, versus a newer, fresher grief that's going to kind of be more near the top. And it's going to be impacting them in a different way. And sometimes you can have layered, traumas or layered emotions on top of it, right? Where you have an older trauma experience, and then you have these newer ones that come in and they get kind of ping that older one and kind of intensify it as well. And so that gives me more information as well. And that's a lot of times what we are working with during the healing portion is some of these emotional aspects that are within the different organ systems that we're looking at energetically. We're finding the, inception point, the root, age and experience that created this energy to begin with. And then we're working on moving that energy through. So, this is just a brief overview of how it is that I work as a medical intuitive. And there are definitely plenty of other practitioners who work differently than I do, who work differently with their guides, who have different frameworks that help them interpret information. But this is what I found has really worked for me and helps me to hone in on the information that I'm seeing. I'll definitely be going into a deeper dive on other episodes about different areas of this, for example, the organ systems or other ways that I'm working and understanding the body. But this should give you an idea from a high level of how it is that I'm working. So, thanks so much for joining me today, and I look forward to sharing more in the future. Thanks for listening to Medical Intuition Illuminated. If this episode resonated, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit. Special thanks to Derek Ryan for music. Until next time, listen deeply to the wisdom of your body.
So